3 years ago, I set off on an adventure to explore every planet and major location in Star Citizen. Back then, they only had a single star system, which was Stanton. Yet even so, it quickly became clear just how massive the game was, and it took me days to explore each major location, and it left me with a profound appreciation for the scale of this game. Now, with Star Citizen's second system, Pyro, and 3 more years of engine updates since my last sightseeing journey, it's time to set off once again to see every planet and moon of Star Citizen's latest star system. So, setting off to explore Pyro, I of course had big expectations, and it wasn't the first time I had seen the system, but I hadn't really made a point to actually go everywhere and explore everything. And naturally, in true Star Citizen fashion, the journey wasn't without its bugs. I hit an invisible rock and blew up. Enemies instantly spawned behind me. You know, the run-of-the-mill Star Citizen stuff. But despite these hiccups, the journey once again left me truly floored by just the incredible vistas and massive scale that the developers have achieved. Pyro is very unlike Stanton in both its visuals and gameplay. It's a mostly lawless system where outside of major locations, players are free to, well, murder each other without at least legal consequences. So the vibe is quite different to say the least. Now to start my journey, I headed out from my home base on Ruin Station. Like the other stations in Pyro, Ruin looks like it's held together with duct tape and prayers. The stations in Pyro are some of the few places in the system where you can access ship services, trade, and buy your gear. So despite their rundown, barely functional appearance, they're actually the bigger hubs of activity in the area. They also have their own extraction zones where players can engage in PvPvE combat to extract high-end loot, like a mini Tarkov inside of Star Citizen. Now, of course, the station was just the starting point for my adventure, and if at any point during this video you are inspired to check out Star Citizen for yourself, be sure to use my referral code. They just updated the referral program this month, July 2nd, and the update means that players get a much bigger starting money bonus. So the referral has basically gotten even better since they first initiated this program. And if you use my referral code, I'll also get some cool gear, which I can hopefully show off in future videos and help me to explore the verse in style. Alright, heading out, I decided to start from the outermost planet in Pyro, which is Terminus. And while this planet is technically habitable through the miracles of modern technology, it's still a breezy negative 120 Celsius during the day. My destination here was Bullock's Reach, one of the several makeshift outposts on the planet. And like many places in Pyro, this is a former corporate installation that's been taken over by the local settlers and/or outlaws. They have a quaint greenhouse farm behind their workshop building, tall windmills held together with rusty nails, and a massive anti-air turret. Just outside the outpost is the wreckage of a crashed cargo ship, and despite how accessible the wreck is, you'll still need some heavy-duty armor to explore it once night falls on Terminus. I nearly froze to death just scavenging a measly pistol. The planet itself is a desolate wasteland of black sands and strange rock formations. Probably the most notable thing about the planet's surface is its incredible view of Terminus's ring. It dominates the sky and is one of the only 2 planets in the system to actually have rings. Overall, you really get the sense that Terminus is a far-off place very few people want to go, and even fewer people dare to call it their home. There's certainly beauty in its barren landscape, but it's more of a sight to see than a place to be. Now, before heading to the next planet, I made a quick pit stop at Gaslight Station to make it my new home base because I was about to spend a lot of time in this area. Pyro 5, the next planet I was going to check out, is a gas giant that has 6 moons plus an entire planet in its orbit. It's certainly one of the densest collections of solar bodies that we've seen in Star Citizen so far, and each moon is wildly different. The planet in its orbit is Pyro 4, and it's one of the strangest looking places in Pyro. Dotted across its surface are these massive stone arches that look like frozen magnetic fields emerging from the planet. Combined with the alien red grass, the surface of Pyro 4 truly is bizarre and beautiful. I visited some remote outposts here that were a notable step up in terms of their size and upkeep from the ones that I visited on Terminus. I even found a small shop in one outpost, but the biggest sign of life I found was a massive abandoned industrial outpost with gigantic cranes and tons of buildings. I landed here during a rainstorm, and while I'm not sure if it was a bug or a feature, the whole area had a small pool of black water covering the surface that looked incredible. I think it's supposed to be a simulation of water pooling in storms, but it dried up with massive square patches of water slowly fading away into the distance. And it was while wandering around looking at the pools of water that I realized I was leaving footprints in the sand as well. Such a small but extremely cool detail to have in a game of this scope and scale. There's also data centers scattered across Pyro 4, high-tech facilities with armed guards on patrol. They're our first sign of modern life in Pyro, but I didn't get to spend too much time here thanks to one of the guards glitching out and killing me. Good thing I set my respawn point close by. Now, despite the toxic atmosphere and negative 20-degree daytime temperatures, Pyro 4 is probably the first place I'd consider calling a home in this system. It's expected to eventually collide with Pyro 5, but in the meantime, it's a beautiful and strange place that's well worth visiting. And in case you were wondering, no, you can't fly into Pyro 5. I also had the same question. Now, if you've got a passion for deserts, Pyro 5's first moon, Ignis, is the destination for you. This habitable rock is basically, well, a giant rock. It's got 2 outposts and some incredible sunrise views. Being so close to Pyro 5 means you can see the gas giant just fine from the surface. In fact, Pyro 5 and its satellites are visible in the night sky from even more distant planets. It's actually incredible when you think about it that you're not looking at a fake skybox in any old video game, but the actual simulated solar system that you can travel to. Let's hop over to the next moon, Vatra. This moon features an extremely dense nitrogen and methane atmosphere, giving it a more hazy look. I parked my ship at an outpost resting in the shadow of a massive cliff face and stole a mule cargo hauler to check out the view. And well, talk about stunning. Vatra may not have a lot going on in its surface, but the thick haze makes sunsets look incredible. And once again, it's hard to ignore that view of Pyro 5. Adir is the next moon, and this one has a really interesting geological feature, a massive streak of obsidian covering the moon's surface that's visible from orbit. The moon itself has no atmosphere, and while there's no official lore or explanation for the obsidian crack, it looks like an asteroid might have skidded across the surface, turning the rock into molten glass. It's such a strange but also captivating sight, seeing literal mountains of obsidian. The next stop is Pyro, and this is basically Pyro's Mars. It has a similarly blood-red surface, though unlike our Mars, it also has a massive ocean around its equator. The outpost I stopped at turned out to be hostile, and all I had on me was a pistol, so I hightailed it out of there and checked out the rest of the landscape. It really is striking just how red the moon is. Looking out over the ocean and then up to see Pyro 5 looming between the moon and the system's sun gives Pyro such an otherworldly feeling. Now, aside from the intensely rough surface and streaks of iron sulfides, Fuego doesn't have a lot going on. This moon is the second furthest from Pyro 5, and it was honestly a surprise to find an outpost on its surface at all. If Ignis was the desert rock of Pyro, well, Fuego is just the straight up rock of the system. Our final moon in the orbit of Pyro 5 is Ver, and at first I thought I was witnessing an epic sunrise on the surface with light-capped mountains, but then I realized it was just the product of some type of oxidation. These yellow-capped mountains break up a landscape that's otherwise mostly flat. I found an abandoned outpost, and despite signs of life, it gave the impression that this entire moon was more or less a long-forgotten bump in the road for most travelers. Now, leaving our gas giant and its many moons behind, we come to Pyro 3, also known as Bloom. This planet was the main hub of mining activity in Pyro until Pyrotechnic Amalgamated went into bankruptcy. Despite discovering Pyro and laying claim to its resources, the cost of operating in such a remote and desolate system ultimately destroyed this company. Most of the stations and planetside structures in Pyro were built by them, which is why you'll see similar buildings throughout the system. Bloom itself is one of the more ecologically diverse planets in Pyro, with frozen poles, vast stretches of land land covered in yellow sand, oceans, and many black mountains as far as the eye can see. This is by far the most habitable planet in the system. The temperature during the day is just below freezing, and the views, especially with the planet's beautiful cloud cover, are some of the most impressive in the whole system. And it's the only planet in Pyro to actually have a breathable atmosphere, so you could take off your helmet if you felt like it for some reason. And the view of the planet from its orbiting space station Obituary is an absolute spectacle. Seeing this dilapidated man-made structure floating like a pile of trash above an idyllic looking world puts into contrast just how deceptive the beauty of Pyro can be. Next planet up is Pyro 2, also known as Monox, lovingly named after its toxic levels of carbon monoxide. This is another planet in the system that was heavily mined. According to Star Citizen's lore, the rush to strip the planet of its vast metal resources left it barren in just 5 years. The scars of that operation are still visible, with settlements like Last Ditch overlooking massive mining rigs that have fallen into disrepair. This planet is also home to the Valakar, which are Star Citizen's mega sandworms, though I didn't run into any on my trip. I did, however, run into a player in a vulture stripping crashed ships of their hulls, and for whatever reason I found a ton of Cutlass Reds scattered around a settlement. So I decided to grab one and head on to Pyro 1. This planet is very close to Pyro's sun, which means it's constantly bombarded by solar flares and radiation. It doesn't have much in terms of resources and is easily one of the least hospitable places in the system, with a toxic atmosphere and surface temperatures over 200 degrees Celsius. Everywhere you look, it's basically massive storms and blue terrain and not much else. That is, except for the Lazarus transport hubs. These are Associated Sciences and Development installations with their own interconnected shuttle systems. The latest update for Star Citizen added an entire persistent quest that focused on these hubs, and I just stopped to check the place out, which naturally led me into a firefight. Fighting my way through the halls and onto the hub's transport shuttle finally made Pyro feel more alive again. The Lazarus buildings are full of heavily armored enemies, including guards and massive radiation suits that apparently have attack dogs. Combined with the massive distortion storms and heavy rain, this final leg of my trip felt like a scene out of Blade Runner. I found myself scavenging for new guns and ammo just to stay alive, only to open a door to a room full of armed guards. It felt comically unfortunate. The facility itself was also gorgeously designed with all sorts of cool atriums and labs. And based on the short time I spent fighting my way through the area, I think I'll definitely be returning to check out some of the Stormbreaker quest lines. Now, planets and moons are one thing, but there's also some pretty cool stations even outside of the major hub ones. First, there's the Pyro Stanton Gateway, which is the station just outside the jump point between Pyro and Stanton. And like most stations in the system, this is a pretty rundown place, but its close proximity to the jump point makes it an important place to refuel when you hop between the systems. There's also several really cool remote asteroid bases scattered around Pyro. These RABs, for short, are derelict facilities that have been taken over by the local pirates. Their defensive turrets are normally online, and you'll often find hostile NPCs floating around. Inside, there's generally pretty solid weapons and gear to loot, though some RABs have pirates walking around that you'll definitely have to deal with if you want to claim that loot. Now, stepping back and comparing Stanton to Pyro, it feels like apples and oranges. Stanton is clearly a much more fleshed out system with 4 megacities on different planets to explore, tons of missions, diverse bases and underground facilities, and, well, just more. It's also been around for like a decade longer of development time. Pyro, on the other hand, is supposed to be a barren wasteland, and to that end, the devs have absolutely nailed it. If you ever wanted to feel like a space cowboy in the Wild West, Pyro is the place to be. The focus seems to be more shifted towards PvP and dangerous activities, especially in the station arenas, or the trickle of some of those new quest lines like Stormbreaker. And what I find exciting about the disparity between the two systems is that it really does change the vibe of Star Citizen, and that's going to be a huge benefit to the game in the long run. If different systems feel different and play differently, players will have a wealth of experiences to choose from when you log on, and where you make your home could absolutely dictate the experience that you have in the verse. I also have to remind myself that we are still exploring Pyro in its infancy to some degree. It's very much at the beginning of its mission development trees, and the game is generally still playing catch up on many fronts, so I look forward to seeing the progress of this system with the rest of the game. But like Stanton, Pyro is still massive, and of course I wasn't able to visit every single facility and hidden location, and I'd be curious if you guys have some locations you want me to check out. Let me know in the comments what some of your top locations in Pyro are, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe for more content, and if you're signing up for that Star Citizen account, don't forget to use my referral code for a massive starting money bonus. And up next, check out my other video exploring every major location in Stanton. Putting the two videos together really gives you a good idea on the scope and scale of Star Citizen. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.